Good evening and welcome. Tonight we are going to be reading this history magazine article about Louis Braille, pioneer with a visionary touch. There's going to be some chaotic sounds because the kitten has decided to just go completely feral, which means that she's going to just be passed out in about 20 minutes, so sorry for all the random kitten running around noises. She's probably going to run up on the desk, and that's why it'll wobble. But anyway, this article was actually requested by my channel members. It was requested by Good Girl Gone South, Chris W., Luna, Pepsi, Cappy, and Victoria. Thank you all so much for requesting. And if you would like to pick a history magazine article, you can become a channel member for only 99 cents a month, the cheapest I can possibly set it. You can pick history magazine articles, you get your name in every video, you get to watch every video early before anyone else, and you get to watch some exclusive content that channel members get to pick the topics. I record it for them, completely ad-free. It's called Members' Choice. So if you'd like to be a part of that, now's the time, because I got my new issue of History Magazine. I've already wrote out all the articles that I can make into videos, and I'm going to post that video tomorrow for the channel members, so the day after this video goes up. So if you're watching it on the day it goes up and you want to join, now is the time. Not to mention I have 149 members. I just need one more for that 150. It'll feel so good. That would be awesome. So yeah, now is the time to join. The link is down in the description box. It's the very first link down there. Or if you are on desktop, there's just a join button right by the subscribe button. You can just click that. Very, very simple. So without further ado, let's read about the life of Louis Braille, whom I'm sure you all recognize that name. He invented Braille, the writing system for the blind. Kittens are all excited to hear about it too. It says, "Where would we be without writing? From its origins over 5,000 years ago in ancient Mesopotamia, the history of writing echoes the history of humanity. The Greeks and Romans developed unique alphabets. The Chinese evolved complex characters. And today we read novels, newspapers, and social media. A bedrock of human civilization, writing is fundamental for the rule of law and the accumulation of knowledge and culture. Yet it was not until the 19th century that blind people had access to writing." It's really hot in here, so I'm going to stick to this background map. Between 1824 and 1825, Louis Braille created a system of raised dot letters that could be read with the hands. Initially ignored, his invention would be universally adopted by the 20th century, opening a new world of learning for the visually impaired. In a speech at the Sorbonne on the centennial of Braille's death, Helen Keller said, "We, the blind, are as indebted to Louis Braille as mankind is to Gutenberg." There she goes. That was a good zoom. Life-changing accident. Okay. The youngest... Sorry. She's insane. Okay, it's time for her to start knocking stuff off the desk, so I have to move it before she does that. Okay. The youngest of 4 children, Braille was born in 1809 in a village of Coupvray, 22 miles east of Paris. His father, Simon René, worked as a saddler, a trade that was always in demand. the family lived comfortably, also cultivating vines for winemaking. Luxuries, such as a bread oven, can be seen today in the house, transformed into the Louis Braille Museum in the 1950s. The centerpiece exhibit is the recreated leather workshop where Braille suffered the accident that would lead to his loss of sight, changing his destiny and the course of history. As a curious 3-year-old, Braille snuck into the shop where no one was around and played with the tools he often watched his father use. When he tried to punch a hole in the leather with an awl, the tool slipped and pierced his eye. This horrific injury led to an infection that spread to both eyes, leaving him blind by the age of 5, as antibiotics were not yet discovered. His distraught parents did not want their son's fate sealed in an era when the visually impaired were treated as subhuman, often ridiculed for their disability. On French city streets, blind people were paraded in silly outfits or resigned to begging. Public school education was not yet mandatory in France, but Braille's parents understood the importance of literacy. To aid his son, Simon René hammered nails into the shape of the alphabet's letters on panels, and a priest named Abbé Jacques Palouis began to instruct Braille. By the age of 7, he attended the local school where he was the only blind student. His teacher was struck by his raw intelligence and happy demeanor, traits that were admired by Braille's friends over the course of his life. A few years later, a scholarship was secured for him to continue his studies at the Royal Institute for Blind Youth, the world's first such school, and one that's still in existence, now called the National Institute for Blind Youth, or the INJA. At 10 years old, he would be its youngest ever student. Most astonishing of all was his close-knit family's consent in allowing him to leave home. His mother and father could have just as easily kept him in the village, explains Farida Saidi Hamid, the curator of the Louis Braille Museum. They are going to write his destiny without knowing it. This familial support would prove a constant for Braille, and he would continue to return to Coupley to rest and recharge throughout his life. Alright, I think it's time for the kitten to calm down. And she's chasing her tail on top of my desk, and it's very cute, but it's also very distracting. Come on, baby. Come on. Don't bite. Ow. Okay. She said no. She says no. Okay. What if I, here, let me get a little piece of paper and crumple it up for her. Oh, that's exciting, she says. Oh, that's the best. Here she comes. Come here, Bunny. Yeah. Ready? Oh, yeah. That's exciting. Ready, set, and here goes. Ready, Bunny. Pew. Alright, now she's off chasing the paper. Okay. Let's see what happens next in his life. A Chance for Education. Founded by pioneering educator Valentin Hauy, the Institute was groundbreaking in its methodology and approach. The students learned a variety of academic subjects and a manual trade. Hauy had devised a means of embossing books with raised letters, which the children could read with their fingertips, albeit with great difficulty. The school would bring Braille's salvation and his demise, because it's likely where he caught the tuberculosis that would kill him. The building, situated in the long-time student hub of Paris's Latin Quarter, was filthy, damp, and run down. It had even served as a prison during the French Revolution. But despite the noxious conditions and the sometimes severe punishment doled out for rule-breaking kids, Braille thrived, making friends and excelling at his studies. Teachers noted his remarkable smarts and spiritual quality. His friend Hippolyte Coltat would later write, "Friendship with him was a conscientious duty as well as a tender sentiment. He would have sacrificed everything for it, his time, his health, his possessions." Eureka moment. The catalyst for Braille's invention came in 1821. Captain Charles Barbier, an artillery officer, had devised a means of night writing for the French army to transmit and carry out orders under the cover of darkness. Convinced of its merit for blind people, Barbier transformed this dot and dash code into a phonetics-based system he presented to the students. There were linguistic flaws. Sonography reduced language to sounds, so spelling was inaccurate and punctuations non-existent. But Braille had an epiphany. A dot system could provide an easy and efficient method for the visually impaired to read and write. He spent the next 4 years working to devise such a code. At the Institute, he'd pull all-nighters after his classes had finished. Even on vacations home to Coupvray, villagers would describe seeing the boy sitting on a hill with stylus and paper in hand. At the age of 15, he succeeded in creating what would become known as Braille writing. The basis was cells of 6 dots arranged in 2 columns and 3 rows. Each combination of raised dots represented a letter of the alphabet. It was elegant in its simplicity and logic. The school's students quickly embraced its use, allowed in an unofficial capacity by Director François-René Pignet. Braille humbly acknowledged his indebtedness to Barbier in his 1829 book, Method for Writing Words, Music, and Plain Song by Means of Dots for the Use of the Blind. If we have pointed out the advantages of our method over his, we must say in his honor that his method gave us the first idea of our own. Battle for Braille. Despite Pignet's promotion of Braille and letters to the government, the system was not immediately accepted. The established order, dictated by the sighted, was resistant to change and favored the uniform use of one writing system. Braille became a teacher at the Institute at the age of 19. By 26, he was diagnosed with tuberculosis, leading to long stretches of convalescence at home in Coupvray. Political machinations at the school led to the ousting of Pignet, whose replacement, Pierre Armand Dufault, flatly rejected the use of Braille. He even burned books and punished students caught using it. Gracefully, Braille persisted in his fight for the acceptance of his new writing system. A letter that he wrote in 1840 to Johann Wilhelm Klein, the founder of a school for the blind in Vienna, shows his humble efforts of persuasion when describing yet another invention, Decapoint, a means for blind and sighted people to communicate. I will be happy if my little methods can be useful for your students, and if this specimen is in your eyes the proof of the high consideration with which I have the honor to be, sir, your respectful and very humble servant, Braille. I should probably say in French it's like Braille, Braille, not Braille. That's how you say it in English. But anyway, a moment of recognition finally came in 1844 at the inauguration of the school's new premises on the Boulevard des Invalides. By this time, Dufault had changed his mind about Braille, thanks to the insistence of Assistant Director Joseph Guadet. Following a speech about the raised dot system, students demonstrated its use by transcribing and reading verse. Guadet later wrote, Braille was modest, too modest. Those around him did not appreciate him. We were perhaps the first to give him his proper place in the eyes of the public, either in spreading his system more widely in our musical instruction, or in making known the full significance of his invention. Connecting the dots. Louis Braille did not live to see the universal adoption of Braille. He died on January 6, 1852, surrounded by his brother and friends. Not a single newspaper carried a death notice for the man called the Apostle of Light by Jean Roblin, the first curator of the Louis Braille Museum. Students raised money for Parisian sculptor François Jouffroy to create a marble bust based on Braille's death mask. In 1878 in Paris, a global Congress for deaf and blind people proposed an international Braille standard. Braille was officially adopted by English speakers in 1932, and post-war UNESCO efforts unified adaptations in India, Africa, and the Middle East. Braille's profound legacy cannot be overstated. On the centennial of his death, Braille's accomplishments were finally celebrated in a national homage. His body was exhumed from the Coupvray Cemetery and transferred to Paris's Panthéon, the resting place of France's great citizens. His hands remained in an urn decorated with ceramic flowers at the Coupvray grave. The parade through the streets of Paris included hundreds of blind people, elbows linked, some wearing dark sunglasses, tapping white canes on the cobblestones. Yet 200 years after the invention of Braille writing, the fight continues. It is a fight to preserve not only the memory of Louis Braille, the subject of surprisingly few biographies, but also the use of his system in the digital age. Increasingly, visually impaired children are learning via screens and audio programs. But neuroscientists argue that writing is essential for thinking, brain connectivity, and learning. The cognitive benefits of writing are fundamentally important. Studies have shown that when a blind person reads Braille through touch, the visual cortex is illuminated. With a shortage of Braille teachers worldwide, Braille literacy has plummeted, and its very future is in peril. Saidi Hamid, the curator of the Louis Braille Museum for nearly 17 years, equates her fight to defend Braille as a combat to defend intelligence itself. Noting Braille's extraordinary personality, Saidi Hamid said, "He always perceived his disability as a strength and not as a limitation. As Braille fought during his lifetime, the fight must go on." Let's read all the little boxes here. This one says global stamp of approval. Also, if you notice, the kitten sounds have stopped. I told you she would just power down after being so crazy. 6 million people around the world use Braille today. Its future is secure in a high-tech world. It can be easily converted to digital formats. It can be read and written on tactile displays on computers or tablets. An expert Braille user can read 200 words a minute, while most sighted people can read 250. Although Braille literacy is declining, it will be necessary for a future in which an aging population increases the number of blind and visually impaired people. Its strength as a universal system that can be used by anyone, regardless of their linguistic background, has attained international hero status for its French creator. Numerous countries have paid homage to Braille in their postage stamps, including those displayed below. It says from the top we have one from the USSR, one from Qatar, and one from India. Let's take a look. I'm going to bring it a little closer so that we can see, but if you are visually impaired listening to this, I'll describe them to you. So this one from the USSR, has a portrait of Louis Braille on it, and it's this beautiful turquoise green color. This one from Qatar is like orangish red and shows hands on a book reading Braille. And then this one from India is gray and it's really long. Usually stamps are wide, I should say, because usually stamps are longer than they are wide. This one's wider than it is long, and it has Louis Braille's bust on it, and it has a pair of hands reading Braille, and from the looks of it, it looks like it has Braille on it. It looks textured with Braille, but I can't tell from the picture. That's just what it looks like. We have a picture up here of Louis Braille's tomb by the looks of it. And it says Braille died of tuberculosis, age 43, in 1852, and was buried in Coupvray. In 1952, his body was reinterred in a tomb, pictured here, in Paris's Panthéon, the mausoleum reserved for France's greatest figures. And it's a very plain tomb, but very respectful, isn't it? I'm pretty sure it says Louis Braille right there on the front. Or something. I can't really read what it says, but it's gotta be his name. And, you know what? It says it up here, I can see. Like right above it. I don't know what that says. I can't read it. Over here it says the new art of Braille. The artist known as The Blind has created unique Braille frescoes across the world since 2004. Based in Nantes in western France, he designs works that can be read by the visually impaired. As an activist, he calls attention to the importance of accessibility to art for all. His work with Braille began with the assembling of plaster half-spheres, later evolving into murals, installations, and sculptures. Deciphering the witty messages requires teamwork between a sighted person and someone who is visually impaired. The Blind posts on Instagram as @theblind1. So the blind one. Blind number 1. So this first art up here says Arrêtons de brailler du noir. Let's stop brailing in black. And it says it in Braille too, and that's from Nantes in 2023. This one has paint splashes across it, and it has Braille written all over it. According to the quote here, it says, "Disrupt the world with color," and it was displayed in Saint-Raphael in France in 2003. This one is up close, probably for a reason, but it has rock wall, like, when you're climbing a rock wall and you have to have the grips. So the grips are spelled out in Braille, and apparently it says touch against breast cancer. I wonder if that's why it's zoomed in, because maybe it's a picture of a breast, I don't know. but this was displayed in Angers in 2023. And then here's an actual rock wall in Braille. I can't see what it says because there's people climbing over most of the words, but the top says va voir, which is like go see, right? Let's see, I believe. It says go up and see if I'm there in English. It says Braille climbing wall at the Festival Rock en Seine in partnership with the 2024 Paralympics. So it's a Braille message that you can climb up like a rock wall. How cool is that? Over here is a 2009 coin from Italy dedicated to Braille. It has stars on the outside, and on the inside it's gold and shows a hand touching an open book with some Braille underneath it. And it says Louis Braille. And then there's a symbol, which I'm guessing is probably a monetary symbol. I'm not sure. All right. This box says, an ear for music. Braille's passion for music was born at the Institute, where professional musicians gave classes. He won the cello prize in his 5th year, developed a talent for the piano, and invented a tactile method for reading and writing music. As an organist, he played for multiple church parishes, which supplemented his meager income as a teacher. The caption for this picture says, the Institute for Blind Youth's Orchestra plays in a 1903 illustration. There you can see boys in what I assume are blue school uniforms, and they're playing cellos and violin and piano. There's one playing a horn. I think that's an oboe in the background. There's a whole little orchestra here. And then this says, an early 1900s chocolate card shows Braille at the organ. I'm guessing that's like if you buy a bar of chocolate, you get a little collector's card. Let's see, it says Chocolat Guérin Boutron. Yeah, this must have been a series. It says Le Bienfaiteur de l'Humanité. To like great people of history, right? Or humanity. And there's a little caption about Braille, but I can't read it because it's teeny tiny. But there's a portrait and then a picture of him at a pipe organ and people watching. This guy's pointing at him like, check this out. And then there's another picture underneath this portrait of hands against a book reading the Braille. This box down here says the Raphigraph. Braille also devised the decapoint system, in which raised dots form standard Latin letters. His friend Pierre-François Victor Foucault developed the Raphigraph to write decapoint. The system is unyieldly, but Braille used the machine to write letters, including to his dear mom. See, it's an interesting looking device. It has like what looks like a bunch of, it looks like sewing needles perched into this machine pointing down at the page. So I'm guessing you would press those in to the page to make different dots and things. Interesting. This box says a tragic accident. Braille was born in Coupvray, east of Paris, in France's Brie region, famous for the cheese of the same name. I love Brie. His childhood home, which became the Musée Louis Braille in the 1950s, is a traditional 3-story house built in the 1700s. The family worked as saddlers in Coupvray for more than a century, passing on the profession. In the museum, the leather workshop showcases an original table, horse bridles, and an awl of the type that blinded Braille in the horrific childhood incident. A marble plaque outside the house honors the inventor with these words: "He opened the doors of knowledge to all those who cannot see." So there's a picture here of the workshop. We can see a wooden desk with a chair and some kind of long wooden poles, which I assume are some kind of tool. They look like massive shoehorns to me. This looks like the awl. It's displayed against this board here with other tools. And then there's a shadow box full of other various tools of which I cannot comprehend. This one looks like a screwdriver. Looks like various awls and clamps. And there's some framed, looks like maybe articles or statements or parts of books. I'm not sure, but it's way too small to read. But it's all very quaint and charming, as most French countryside places are. There's a statue of Louis Braille here. This is in Buenos Aires, Argentina. And it's him with his hands on a book, reading the Braille. His hands look really big, like in proportion to the rest of his body, but that's probably just the angle of the camera, I'm guessing. This box says, "A remarkable strength." Changing attitudes before Braille's birth helped pave the way for tolerance. Philosopher Denis Diderot's 1749 Letter on the Blind argued blind people have the same intellectual capacity as sighted people, which today we're like, of course, but back then that was like a revolutionary thought that disabled people could think like non-disabled people. But anyway, schools for the blind opened in France and England in the late 1700s, but Braille's writing system provided a means of engaging with texts and scores. Braille was motivated by his affection for the visually impaired community, a kindness and grace apparent in his letters. His will, which bequests to everyone down to the night watchman and directing to burn a box of IOUs people in debt had left him, mirrored his generosity. And there's a big portrait of him. All these biography articles have a portrait of the person they're talking about on this page. It says Braille's depicted on a collector's card from the 1920s. Over here is a set of dominoes that was owned by Braille. It says it was specially adapted. It looks like, sorry for the airplane, it looks like the dots on the dominoes are, looks like they're pressed down so that you could feel the like holes that are there instead of raised bumps up. It's interesting. And then let's read this timeline here, a persistent path to invention, but we're going to wait for the airplane to go by first. I always think, because it's 3 in the morning right now while this plane's flying overhead, it's flying to the airstrip at the outskirts of our town, because we live in a resort town with like a world-class golf course. All of the rich and famous that come to the golf course fly in the middle of the night to the airstrip, and then they're like escorted under the shade of darkness, under the cloak of night. So that was a very rich person flying over us right now. Just so you know, that was a very wealthy person, maybe a celebrity, that doesn't want to be seen in the daytime with the regular people. But let's read about Louis Braille's lifetime timeline. It says 1809. Louis Braille is born in Coupvray, east of Paris. As a child, he loses his sight after an accident in his father's workshop. 1819. In Paris, he enrolls at France's Royal Institute for Blind Youth, the world's first such school. In 1821, Captain Charles Barbier presents his military code of night writing. Inspired, Braille adapts it for blind people. Between 1824 and 1825, during these years, Braille officially completes his writing system. Later, he invents a code for music. And in 1852, Braille dies in Paris after a long battle with tuberculosis and is buried in Coupvray. That is this biography article about Louis Braille. I hope you enjoyed, and if you would like to pick a future history magazine article, you can click the join button right down there, or click the first link in the description box if that button is not there for you if you're on mobile. And you can become a channel member. And like I said, I'll be posting that video tomorrow. Doesn't mean you have to vote tomorrow. You can vote, anytime up until I make the videos to have your name included in that video. So, now is the time to join so you can be part of that. But thank you so much for watching. I do hope that you found this video to be relaxing and educational, and I